The galaxy had always belonged to the Empire, so everyone believed. For centuries, its vast fleets had patrolled the outer borders, guarding their territories with an unshakable confidence born from unmatched military power and centuries of control. Empire starships moved like shadows through the endless blackness of space, their crews trained to expect threats and eliminate them before they could pose any danger. On this seemingly ordinary day, the routine was broken by a sudden anomaly, a blip on the sensors so faint that many dismissed it at first. But the sensors persisted, detecting something unusual far beyond the usual traffic of merchant vessels or scouting probes. Then, as if materializing out of the void itself, a warship appeared, one unlike any other in the Empire's vast archives or memory. It was not just the design that caught the attention of the fleet commanders. It was the complete absence of a detectable energy signature or any recognizable technology. It seemed to slip through their sensor nets like a ghost, as if hidden by an unknown force or advanced stealth. The warship's shape was sleek and sharp, with edges that caught the faint starlight in ways that made it almost disappear into the background of space. It carried no flags or symbols, no identifying marks that could reveal its origin or purpose. The Empire's ships, armed to the teeth and built for war, turned toward the strange vessel, their crews alert and ready for battle. But the warship did not respond with hostility or communication. It simply moved slowly, deliberately positioning itself between the Empire's patrol fleet and the space beyond. The commanders felt a chill, not from fear, but from a rising sense of curiosity and unease. This was no random trespasser. It was a challenge, quiet and cold, like a shadow stepping forward to test the light. Orders crackled over the fleet's communications to scan, to prepare weapons, and to establish contact. Yet every attempt to communicate was met with silence. The warship emitted no signals, no messages, no hint of intention beyond its unwavering presence. As minutes stretched into hours, the patrol fleet realized their usual tactics and technologies were useless against this enigma. Their scanners returned only questions, and their weapons seemed powerless to provoke any reaction. The atmosphere aboard the Empire's ships grew tense. Crews whispered of legends long forgotten in ancient races that might have vanished but left behind remnants of terrifying power. But none of those stories matched what they were witnessing now. The warship was alive with purpose, but its purpose was a mystery. The Empire's leaders convened in the command bridge of their flagship, a towering vessel bristling with weaponry and electronic warfare systems. Their high-ranking officers debated the nature of the threat. Was this a new enemy? An unknown civilization rising from the darkness? Or perhaps a rogue faction testing their defenses? None of these guesses satisfied the uneasy silence that hung over their discussions. Meanwhile, aboard the mysterious warship, the crew moved with a calm certainty. They knew the Empire's reputation and the danger they faced. But their mission was clear: to send a message, to break the illusion of invincibility the Empire had built around itself. The human captain, Commander Voss, watched the Empire's fleet through the warship's transparent command dome, his expression steady and resolute. He had seen empires rise and fall, and he knew that this moment was the turning point. His ship was not just a weapon, it was a symbol of a new hope, a challenge to the arrogance of a power that believed itself eternal. As the Empire's fleet repositioned, preparing for what they assumed would be a swift battle, the human warship held its ground. It did not fire, it did not retreat. It simply waited, silent and immovable. The tension in space grew thick enough to cut with a blade, each side watching the other, calculating their next move. The silence itself became a voice, louder than any cannon fire, louder than any shouted order. The Empire was forced to confront the fact that this was not a fight. They could win with brute force or fear alone. Somewhere beyond the sensors, something new had arrived. Something that did not belong to any known history or expectation. The question was no longer if they could destroy it, but what it meant for the future of the galaxy. As the hours passed, the silent warship seemed to absorb the stars around it, a dark promise on the horizon. No one in the Empire could yet understand who these humans were or why they had come. But everyone knew that their peaceful borders had been broken.
Us.
Defenses, built on centuries of dominance and technology, had failed to see the storm that had quietly emerged from nowhere. And as the first light of a new era began to dawn, the Empire stood on the edge of a vast unknown, forced to reckon with a silent challenger, whose presence alone shattered their sense of control. The silence that had hung heavily over the space, between the Empire's fleet and the mysterious human warship, shattered in an instant as the Empire's flagship gave the order to open fire. A wave of laser blasts, plasma bursts, missile volleys surged toward the human vessel with devastating force. Confident in the belief that their superior numbers and advanced weaponry would quickly overwhelm this unknown threat. But to the shock of every officer and crew member watching the battle unfold, the human warship's hull absorbed the attacks almost effortlessly. The blasts sparked and scattered off its surface like rain droplets on a steel shield, leaving no visible damage. The Empire's weapons, considered the pinnacle of galactic military technology, seemed useless against this new adversary. Crews aboard the Empire's ships exchanged nervous glances, their confidence shaken as their most powerful weapons failed to make a dent. Then, as if waiting for the perfect moment, the human warship shifted its position with sudden grace and deadly purpose. Without warning, it unleashed a precise counterattack. Beams of focused energy struck at the Empire's key warships, not with brute force, but with surgical accuracy. Engines exploded in bursts of flame, weapon arrays were disabled, and communication systems were knocked offline. The human ship avoided unnecessary destruction, showing a restraint and discipline that stunned the Empire's commanders. This was not mindless aggression. It was a calculated message. The fleet began to falter under the relentless precision of the human warship's assault, and fear crept into the hearts of even the most seasoned admirals. They realized that this was no ordinary enemy. It was a force that combined advanced technology with tactical genius, a deadly combination that had caught the Empire unprepared. Amidst the chaos, the human warship suddenly broadcast a message in perfect Empire standard language, clear and commanding, echoing through the communication networks of every ship in the fleet. We are here to claim what was lost. Surrender or be remembered only as history. The words rang out like a challenge and a warning, carrying the weight of centuries of pain and determination. The fleet's commanders paused, absorbing the significance of the message and the truth behind it. This was not just a battle for territory or resources. It was a fight for the soul of the galaxy, a reckoning for the Empire's long history of conquest and oppression. The human captain, Commander Voss, stood in the command center of his warship, watching the fleet's response with steady eyes. He knew the power of his words and the importance of his mission. The Empire had built its strength on fear and control, but now that control was slipping. The humans would not simply be defeated or forgotten. They would rewrite the story of the stars. As the Empire's fleet regrouped, desperation took hold. New tactics were tried, new weapons unleashed, but the human warship adapted to every move with ease. It danced through the battlefield like a shadow, its crew united by purpose and discipline. Every strike it delivered was measured and meaningful, designed not just to destroy, but to weaken the Empire's will to fight. On board the Empire's command ships, tension boiled over into heated debates. Some called for immediate retreat to preserve what remained of the fleet. Others demanded reinforcements and escalated attacks. Yet none could deny the growing realization that the age of Empire dominance might be ending. Human warships. Action spoke louder than any weapon here, was a power that refused to be ignored, a force that challenged the very foundation of the Empire's authority. Far beyond the battlefield, on worlds long oppressed by the Empire's rule, eyes turned to the stars in hope and disbelief. The news of the human warship's strike spread quickly, carried by secret transmissions and whispered among those who dreamed of freedom. The galaxy's oppressed saw in this lone ship a symbol of resistance and the possibility of change. The Empire's message of invincibility was cracking, and the silence that had once enforced their control was now broken by the roar of rebellion. Through the turmoil, Commander Voss remained calm, his voice steady as he guided his crew through the unfolding storm. He understood the risks and the weight of the mission. but he also believed deeply in the strength of humanity's spirit, resilient, creative, and unyielding. This battle was only the beginning, and though the Empire's fleet was vast and powerful, it had underestimated what it meant to face a foe who fought not just with weapons, but with hope. The human warship's first strike was a message written in fire and courage. The Empire's era was over, and a new chapter was about to begin. As the echoes of the first strike faded, the Empire's command centers were thrown into chaos, their leaders scrambling desperately to understand the sudden emergence of the human warship and its devastating power. The very idea of humanity returning from the shadows was almost unbelievable. For centuries, the galaxy believed that humans had vanished, their colonies lost or destroyed in the long past, or scattered and insignificant. But now, with the human ship standing unyielding before the Empire's forces, that belief was shattered. Among the wreckage of a disabled Empire frigate, skilled intelligence officers recovered a faint, encrypted transmission, a rare treasure amid the static of battle. As analysts decrypted the message, a clearer picture began to emerge, one that sent waves of unease through the Empire's highest ranks. The transmission revealed that humanity had not disappeared, but had instead been quietly advancing in a remote, hidden region of space, beyond the reach of the Empire's watchful eyes. These distant colonies, once thought forgotten, had grown stronger and wiser, developing technology unlike anything the galaxy had seen. This technology was not just powerful, it was crafted from a unique blend of ingenuity, adaptability, and an unbreakable spirit forged in the fires of hardship and survival. The Empire's historians and scientists pored over the data, struggling to comprehend how humans had managed to remain hidden for so long and to develop such sophisticated weaponry and tactics. Rumors began to spread across the Empire's fleets, and colonies whispers of a human resurgence led by a fearless and charismatic leader known only as Commander Voss. Unlike the cold, distant commanders of the Empire, Voss was said to inspire fierce loyalty and hope among his people, a figure who spoke not just of war, but of justice and renewal. In a carefully arranged broadcast, the human warship projected Commander Voss's image into the Empire's communication networks, his voice calm but resolute as he addressed the galaxy. He told the story of humanity's long struggle, how they had survived the Empire's expansion, how they had hidden in the shadows to grow stronger, and why they had finally returned. The Empire's relentless conquest had crushed countless worlds and civilizations,
I'm leaving suffering and silence in its wake.
Humanity could no longer stand by while oppression spread unchecked. They rose to protect the innocent, to restore balance, where there had been only greed and destruction. This was not a threat born of hatred, but a promise born of responsibility. The message echoed in the minds of every listener, stirring unease among the Empire's elite and hope among those who had suffered under its rule. Commander Voss spoke of a future where the galaxy would no longer be ruled by fear and domination, but by cooperation and respect for all life. The Empire's confidence wavered as this new truth took hold. The human warship was not a lone pirate or a desperate rebel. It was the spearhead of a movement that would change everything. Fleet commanders realized that their enemy was not just a ship or a fleet, but a symbol of something much greater, a challenge to the very foundations of their power. Behind the calm exterior of Commander Voss and his warship lay a force driven by determination and a fierce desire to reclaim what was lost. The human's sudden reemergence was not just a battle tactic. It was a declaration that the era of unchecked Empire rule was coming to an end. In secret meetings, Empire leaders debated their next steps, some urging immediate peace talks, others demanding total destruction of the human fleet. But the humans had already shown they could withstand the Empire's might, and had something the Empire lacked, a cause that inspired loyalty and courage beyond technology or numbers. Meanwhile, on the human warship, Commander Voss and his crew prepared for the challenges ahead. They knew the road would be long and difficult, but they also understood the power of hope and unity. The human revelation was only the beginning, a spark that could ignite change across the galaxy. The once quiet colonies had become a force, to be reckoned with, a beacon for all who dreamed of freedom. As the Empire struggled to respond, the humans moved forward, ready to face whatever came next with unwavering resolve. The galaxy was watching, and the story of humanity's return was just unfolding, an unexpected chapter filled with mystery, courage, and the promise of a new dawn. The Empire, shaken by the unexpected resilience and power of the human warship, quickly regrouped and prepared a massive counteroffensive, determined to crush this new threat before it could inspire further rebellion among their controlled worlds. Their grand armada gathered in formation, the largest warships ever assembled. Bristling with heavy weapons and carrying elite squadrons of the best pilots and soldiers the Empire had to offer, the commanders were confident that overwhelming firepower and sheer numbers would put an end to the humans' defiance in one decisive strike. As the armada moved into position, a heavy silence fell over the battlefront, the weight of expectation pressing down on every ship and crew. But the humans were not deterred. Instead, their ingenuity and spirit shone brightest under the pressure of overwhelming odds. Commander Voss had prepared his fleet for this moment, knowing that a direct fight would favor the Empire's traditional strengths. The humans relied on asymmetric tactics, moving unpredictably, striking where the enemy least expected, and retreating before the full force of the Empire's wrath could be brought to bear. Their ships slipped through enemy lines, using advanced stealth technology, disappearing and reappearing like shadows on the edge of the battle zone. This made it impossible for the Empire's massive fleet to predict where the next strike would come, or even if it would come at all. The humans targeted key points, supply lines, communication hubs, and the weak spots in the Empire's warships' defenses. Each attack was swift and precise, aimed to disable and confuse rather than destroy outright, forcing the Empire to spread its forces thin and lose coordination. The Empire's commanders grew frustrated as their traditional battle doctrine, built on overwhelming force and strict formations, failed against this new way of warfare. Their attempts to adapt were always a step behind the humans' unpredictable maneuvers. Every victory for the humans sent a powerful message, not just to the Empire's forces, but to the countless colonies and planets living under its rule. The oppressed began to hear rumors of human fleets slipping past blockades, helping resistance fighters, and striking blows against Empire outposts far from the main battle. These stories traveled quickly, carried by secret transmissions and whispered in hidden gatherings. Hope, long buried under years of fear, started to flicker again. The morale of the colonies rose with each human success, and a new wave of rebellion began to stir. Even within the Empire's own ranks, cracks began to appear. Soldiers and officers who had once accepted the Empire's rule without question started to doubt the invincibility they had been taught to believe in. Quiet conversations turned into whispered discussions about change, freedom, and the possibility of a future without the Empire's iron grip. These whispers, small at first, grew louder with each passing day, fueled by the undeniable proof that the Empire could be challenged and even defeated. On the battlefield, the turning tide became impossible to ignore. The human warship, once a solitary shadow, now led a growing fleet of allies in liberated worlds. Each engagement weakened the Empire's resolve and forced it to reconsider its strategy. The great armadas that had once inspired fear now faced a new reality, one where technology alone was not enough, and where the spirit of a people fighting for justice proved stronger than the might of any empire. Commander Voss remained calm and focused, guiding his fleet with steady hands and a clear vision. He knew that winning battles was important, but the true victory lay in inspiring others to believe in a better future. His crew shared this belief, their determination unshaken by the size of the enemy or the dangers ahead. The galaxy watched as the old order began to crumble, and a new hope rose from the ashes. The humans had not only survived, they had changed. The course of history, the Empire's counteroffensive, had failed to crush the spirit of those who fought for freedom, and in its place, a movement was born. A movement that promised a future where the galaxy would no longer be ruled by fear, but by courage, unity, and the unyielding power of hope. As the war stretched on, Empire's once unbreakable defenses began to crumble under the relentless pressure of the human-led coalition. Systems that had stood loyal for centuries slipped quietly into rebellion, their fleets and populations turning against the Empire's rule. The vast network of control that had kept the galaxy in a state of submission was unraveling, and the Empire's leaders faced a harsh truth. Their power was fading. And the humans were not just a fleeting threat, but the spark of a new era. The human warship that had appeared from nowhere, breaking through the Empire's sensors and challenging their might. Now led a coalition of liberated planets, their combined forces gathering for a decisive battle near the heart of the Empire. Itself the capital system that had symbolized tyranny and control for generations. The space above the capital world became a swirling tempest of warships from many worlds, a sight that had never been seen before in the history of the galaxy. The Empire's grand fleets, once confident and unshakable, now moved with hesitation and uncertainty. They knew the humans had changed the rules of war, had brought a new kind of fight, one fueled by hope, unity, and the unyielding desire for freedom. Commander Voss stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by allies who represented countless races and worlds, all united by a shared dream of peace and justice. His calm voice carried over the communication networks not as a command to fight, but as a call to remember why they stood together. The battle that followed was fierce and brutal, a clash of titanic forces that shook the stars themselves. But it was not only the weapons and strategy that defined the fight. It was the spirit behind it. The coalition fought with courage and determination, their hearts bound by the belief that this was more than a war, it was a fight for the future of every being in the galaxy. Slowly, the tide turned. The Empire's ships faltered, their commanders, forced to admit that their strategies were no longer enough. As their fleets retreated, a quiet wave of relief and hope swept through the coalition's forces and the liberated worlds watching from afar. The warship that had emerged from nowhere now stood at the forefront of victory, a symbol not of destruction, but of renewal. When the battle finally ended, the Empire's leaders were left with no choice but to confront the reality they had long denied. Humanity was more than a threat. They were the embodiment of change, the living proof that even the mightiest empires could fall and that new beginnings were possible. In a broadcast heard throughout the galaxy, Commander Voss addressed all who listened, his voice steady and filled with promise. We fight not to conquer, but to unite. Together, we are stronger than any empire. His words were a beacon to all who had suffered under oppression, a message that the future belonged to those who dared to hope and stand together. As peace began to spread across the stars, the coalition worked to rebuild, to heal the wounds left by war, and to create a galaxy where freedom, courage, and resilience defined every world. The human warship, once a mysterious shadow in the void, became a shining symbol of that new dawn, a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could emerge, powerful and unstoppable, lighting the way toward a better tomorrow.